Hey everybody, it's Mr. Oaks. So we're going to continue talking about factoring of polynomials, and today is going to be factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient of 1. And what I have here in this spot right here, with a little mistake, yeah, this chart paper is not cheap. What are you going to do? But what I have here is the general form of a trinomial. That's a three-termed polynomial. Ax squared plus bx plus c. A is the coefficient of the x squared term, b is the coefficient of the x term, and c is our constant. And when I talk about a leading coefficient of 1, what I mean is our a is equal to 1. So we don't see a number other than 1 in front of our x squared term. Now when we're looking at a trinomial and we're thinking about factoring it, we really have to think about what is going on with b and c. Now the reason why we're starting off with a leading coefficient of 1 for our x squared is that it's a little simpler to do than if we have a coefficient other than 1 as our a here. So the thing to remember is this. B is going to be where our middle terms add together. If you remember us doing foiling where we were multiplying binomials, we always had our middle terms had to add together. And depending on whether they were the same sign or opposite signs, it would determine what our middle term was. So when we're trying to factor, we want to know, well, what two numbers add up to the middle term, to b? C is going to be our product. So what we're going to be looking for is what two numbers multiply out to whatever is our constant c. Now, there's a relation there because we can't have different numbers adding up to b and different than two totally different numbers adding up to c. We need to find two numbers that multiply out to c and add up to b. And that's our key here. Now a couple of things we can look at. First off is we're going to look at the signs. So the first sign we're actually going to look at is the sign on whatever number is where c is. If we have a plus sign, if we're having plus whatever number c is, then the sign of the numbers multiplying is the same, because a negative times a negative equals a positive, and a positive times a positive equals a positive. So if we have a plus at the end, we have the same signs. If we have a minus at the end, then we know that our signs are going to be opposites. And then we can just figure out, well, let's put a plus in one parenthesis and a minus in the other. And we'll see that as we go along here. But once we know what type of signs we're dealing with, we can start to look at the middle. Now, if this is a plus at the end, we need to look at the middle term to know, well, are we dealing with two positives or two negatives? And the reason why is because when we add to get the middle term, well, if both numbers are positive, then our middle term is going to be positive. And if both of our numbers are negative, then our middle term is going to be negative. And the best way to see that is through some examples. So this first example here, x squared plus 12x plus 32. So as we see, I don't see a number in front of x squared, so our assumption is that there's a 1 there. Our b is 12, and our c is 32. So the first number I'm going to focus on, well, actually, even before that, what I'm going to first do is I'm always going to run through, let me go through my first two factoring methods to see if I need those first. So I'm always going to ask myself, is there a greatest common factor between the three terms? X squared, 12x, and 32. In this case, no. Then we go to difference of two squares. Is this a difference of two squares? Well, there's no subtraction and there's more than two things, and none of them are perfect squares with the exception of the x squared. So can't do greatest common factor, can't do difference of two squares. So now we start to deal with what I just refer to as trinomial factoring. So once I get that, I know that I'm going to have two sets of parentheses. And the first thing I'm going to look at is this x squared. In order for me to get an x squared, I'm just going to have x times x. So I'm going to put that in the front of my parentheses. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my last term, the plus 32. It's a plus, so I know that whatever operation I put in these two parentheses is going to be the same. Either they're both going to have addition or they're both going to have subtraction. And the way I figure that out is I look at the middle term. If the middle term is a positive and the last term is a positive, then I'm going to put plus plus. Not because this is plus plus, but because I'm multiplying and getting a positive, and the only way I can add and get a positive as well is if I have plus plus. So I'm going to put a plus here, I'm going to put a plus here. Now, I'm going to factor 32. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write out 32, and I'm going to figure out its factor pairs. Namely, what are the two numbers that when I multiply them together give me 32? So, first one, I'm always going to start off with 1 times whatever this number is. 1 and 32. Next I'll go to 2. Does 2 go into 32? It's an even number, so yes it does. 2, 32 divided by 2, 16. Does 3 go into 32? No, it does not. How do I know? Because I know something can be divided by 3 if when I add its digits together, I get a multiple of 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 is not a multiple of 3. 32, can it be divided by 4? Yes, it can. So, 4 and 8. Okay? And then I keep going. Can it be divisible by, is it divisible by 5? No, because it doesn't end in 0 or 5. It's not divisible by 6 because it's not divisible by 3. So I get to that point, and divisible by 7, no. By that time I'm wrapped around. So now what I got is I got 3 different pairings that are candidates. 1 and 32, 2 and 16, and 4 and 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these and I'm going to add them together. So to find out what my B is. So B needs to equal 12. So 1 plus 32, that's 33. Doesn't work. 2 plus 16, that's 18. That doesn't work. The only option is the last one, but let's make sure. 4 plus 8 is 12. We need it to equal 12. So 4 and 8 are our possibilities. And since we have the same sign in both parentheses, 4 here, 8 here, or I could switch the order. 8 here, 4 here. But my answer at the end of the day for this first example is x plus 4 times x plus 8. Okay? So that's one of our examples. Our next example, and I'm actually going to switch, see if purple works a little better, is x squared minus 4x plus 4. So again, I'm going to look at this, I go through greatest common factor. No, I don't have something that even though I have 4's here, I need something that 4 would go into over here. Doesn't work. X squared and x, but I don't have an x over here, so greatest common factor doesn't work. Difference of two squares. Yeah, I have subtraction, but again, I have three terms there, so it doesn't work. So I'm going to set up my parentheses. Since x doesn't have a number in front of it, I'm just going to throw x right in the front of those parentheses. Okay. Next, I look at my final term. It's plus 4. So that's a plus. That means that in both parentheses I'm going to have the same sign, the same operation. So I look to the middle term to tell me what that operation is. It's a minus. So since this operation in each parentheses has to be the same, it's going to both be minus. So I put a minus in both. Notice, I'm not putting minus plus because it's not what I have up here. I have the same operation in both, and that operation is minus. So, now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go back to my C term. C equals 4. So I need its factor pairs. I always start with 1 times whatever the number is, 1 times 4, and then we have 2 times 2. B has to equal a -4. Now, since they're going to have the same sign, I'm not really concerned about the minus. So I'm actually going to just cross that out because it's the same sign for both. So whatever it is, I'm just throwing that in here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say, okay, well, let me see. 1 plus 4, that equals 5. I need it to equal 4. 2 plus 2, that equals 4. So I'm going to put a 2 in each of the parentheses. And there's my answer. Okay? So, one more. I just want to move this up again. Okay. So we've had x squared plus b, x plus c. We've had x squared minus bx plus c. Now we have finally where my last term is a minus. Okay? So again, real quick. Greatest common factor? No. Difference of two squares? No. So I'm going to set up two parentheses. I have x squared. That means I have to have an x at the front of both parentheses. Alright. Then I look at the last term. It's a minus. Minus means I need the opposite signs in both parentheses. Alright? Different operation. Because the only way I get a negative number when I multiply is when I have a positive multiplying a negative. So I'm going to put a plus in the first parentheses and a minus in the second parentheses. So now when I look in the middle term, the question becomes, which one of these is going to get the bigger number? Because the question becomes, is my middle term, when I add my two factors together, am I going more negative or am I going more positive? So when I look here, we have a -6. So now what I need to do is say, okay, well, I need two numbers that when I subtract them, that they're going to give me a 6. And that whatever one is bigger is going to go, in this case, in the negative. Now, if this was a +6, I would then say, well, the bigger number is going to go into by where the plus is, the parentheses with the plus. So, let's see. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, I need the factors of 27. So, C equals, and I'm just going to write 27 because, again, the larger of the two factors is the one that's going to go in the parentheses that has the sign that we have in the middle, in this case, subtraction. So, again, my factors, I always start with 1 and whatever the number is. So in this case, 1 and 27. 2 doesn't go into 27, but 3 does, and 3 goes in 9 times. 4 doesn't go in, 5 doesn't go in, 6 doesn't go in, 7 doesn't go in, 8 doesn't go in, and we're back around to 9. So what I need for B is a 6. So when I subtract, I need to get 6. So I'm going to start off 27 minus 1 is 26. That doesn't work. 9 minus 3 is 6. That works. Okay, well, which one of these two factors is bigger, 9 or 3? 9's bigger, so 9 is going to be negative. So I take that 9, I put it in the parentheses that has the minus in it, and I take the 3, and I put it where the plus is. So that x plus 3 times x minus 9 will multiply back to x squared minus 6x minus 27. I hope this video was helpful. If you did find it helpful, please like and subscribe. And I know this is happening June 8th is the date, and we're about to go into the summer. I'm going to keep doing these videos. Please, please, please use this to help you prepare for the next year and make sure you don't forget stuff. Please try to be a lifelong learner. Be well, be safe, and I'll see you next time.